Every year, millions of people set ambitious goals to change their lives, only to abandon them a few weeks later, feeling frustrated and burned out. We constantly rely on sheer willpower or look for massive, earth-shattering solutions, mistakenly believing that massive success requires massive action. In Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals a counterintuitive truth. If you are having trouble changing your behaviors, the problem isn't you, it's your system. You will discover how making tiny 1% improvements daily acts like compound interest, accumulating into remarkable long-term results. Listen now to uncover the proven, step-by-step science to seamlessly break your bad habits and make your good ones entirely inevitable.
Wow. Yeah.
And welcome back to the deep dive. I'm genuinely excited for this one because, let's be honest, we have all been there. You buy the fancy planner, you get the new running shoes, you declutter your desk, and you feel like this totally new person for, about 4 days?
Yeah, exactly. And then by day 5, the shoes are gathering dust, the desk is a complete disaster zone again, and your planner's basically just an expensive coaster for your coffee mug.
It is the universal cycle of shame. But today, we are breaking that cycle. We're digging into James Clear's work, specifically looking at 10 crucial lessons on how small habits, the atoms, build massive systems. And I know you've probably seen this book everywhere, but we aren't just doing a surface-level summary today. Yeah. We really want to get into the biology and psychology of why you do what you do.
Right, and that's the mission here. It's about the mechanics. Clear isn't just giving you, motivational fluff. He is offering an operating manual for the human brain. The whole premise is that we obsess over the finish line, the gold medal. But we totally ignore the tiny invisible gears that actually move us forward.
Which perfectly brings us to lesson 1. Get 1% better every day. And the source uses this incredible story about British cycling. Honestly, before we researched this, I had no idea their track record was that abysmal.
Oh, it was tragic. We aren't talking about a team that was just sort of average. For an entire century leading up to 2003, British riders had won exactly 1 gold medal at the Olympics.
1 in 100 years.
Just 1. And it gets worse because they had never, not even once, won the Tour de France. It was so bad that some of the top bike manufacturers in Europe actually refused to sell gear to the team.
Because they thought it would ruin their brand image. That is a level of petty that I almost respect.
It's brutal. But that is the baseline they were at when Dave Brailsford came in as the new performance director. And the interesting thing is, Brailsford didn't walk in and say, we need to train twice as hard, or we need to recruit a superstar. He brought in this concept called the aggregation of marginal gains.
Which is really just a fancy way of saying, let's improve everything by a tiny, tiny fraction.
Precisely. His logic was, if you break down every single component of riding a bike, literally anything you can think of, and you improve it by just 1%. Those small gains will compound. So they started with the obvious stuff, better aerodynamics, lighter tires, tweaking the nutrition.
But then they went completely off the deep end, right? They started doing things that sound entirely obsessive.
Oh, absolutely. They tested different massage gels to find out which specific one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon, to teach the athletes the optimal way to wash their hands so they wouldn't catch a cold. They tested mattresses and pillows to see which ones gave each specific rider the best sleep.
My favorite detail is the truck. They painted the entire inside of the team's transport truck pristine white. Not because it looked cool, but so they could spot these tiny specks of dust that might get into the bike gears and degrade performance. Now let's be real. Does painting a truck white win you the Tour de France?
On its own? No, of course not.
It feels like busy work.
It does, but this is the math of compound interest applied to human behavior. A speck of dust is nothing. A slightly better pillow is nothing. But when you stack hundreds of these 1% improvements on top of each other, the growth curve just goes vertical. Just 5 years after Brailsford took over, the British cycling team dominated the 2008 Beijing Olympics. They won 60% of the gold medals available.
From a total laughingstock to an absolute dynasty.
And 4 years after that, in London, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. They didn't use a magic pill. They literally just used math.
And the math is wild. The source highlights this calculation. If you can get just 1% better each day for 1 year, you end up 37 times better by the end of the year.
37 times. It's staggering.
But there is a flip side to that coin.
Unfortunately, yes. The math works in reverse. If you get 1% worse each day for a year, your skills or your health decline nearly down to 0. A skipped workout here, eating poorly there, doesn't feel like a disaster in the moment.
It feels like nothing at all, which reminds me of that airplane analogy from the text. I think about this all the time now. It is the perfect visual.
Yeah, so imagine you're a pilot flying from Los Angeles to New York City. If you leave LAX and adjust your heading just 3.5 degrees south, the nose of the plane moves maybe a few feet. At takeoff, no one notices. The passengers are just drinking their coffee. But if you magnify that tiny invisible error across the entire United States, you end up landing in Washington, D.C. instead of New York, a completely different destination caused by a shift that was basically imperceptible at the start.
Exactly. But here's the problem, and this gets into lesson known. I think this is where most of us hit a massive wall. We understand the math intellectually 37 times better, we get it. But emotionally, it is so frustrating. You go to the gym for 2 weeks, you eat the sad desk salad, you drink a gallon of water, and you look in the mirror and nothing has changed.
Right, you're thinking, I did the work, so where is my reward?
Yes, and that lack of immediate progress makes us quit. Why are we wired to give up right when we should keep going?
Well, Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential. And he uses this ice cube analogy that I think brilliantly captures that exact frustration. Imagine you have an ice cube sitting on a table in a very cold room. The room is 25 degrees. You want to melt the ice cube, so you start turning up the heat.
Okay, I'm with you.
26 degrees. The ice cube is still frozen solid. 27, 28. Nothing is happening. You're putting energy into the system, you're doing the work, but there are zero visible results. 29, 30, 31.
See, at 31 degrees, I am throwing my hands up and quitting. I've raised the temperature 6 degrees, and the ice is just sitting there mocking me.
And that right there is the valley of disappointment. That is where most people abandon their new habit. But then you hit 32 degrees, and the ice finally begins to melt. Now ask yourself, was it that 1 degree shift from 31 to 32 that did all the work?
No, it was all the stored energy from 25 degrees onward.
Exactly. The work wasn't wasted. It was just being stored up. That is the plateau of latent potential. We constantly expect progress to be linear. We think, I put in 5 days of work, I should see 5 days of results. But reality is delayed. You have to persist through that valley of disappointment to finally hit 32 degrees.
That actually gives me a lot of comfort. Just because you don't see the change doesn't mean the heating up isn't happening. But this totally conflicts with everything we're taught about success. We are always told to set big, audacious goals like, I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to write a novel. But lesson 2 throws that out the window.
It does. Lesson 2 is focus on systems, not goals. And it sounds completely backwards at first. But think about survivorship bias. If you look at any competition, a job interview, the Olympics, a marathon, the winners and the losers actually have the exact same goal.
That is so true. Every single Olympian wants the gold medal.
Right. So if the winners and the losers share the same goal, the goal cannot be the thing that differentiates them. It wasn't the goal of winning that made the British cyclists successful. It was the meticulous system of 1% improvements they actually executed every day.
Plus, goals create this terrible yo-yo effect. I see this with cleaning my house. My goal is have a clean house, so I spend 4 hours scrubbing everything on a Sunday. Goal achieved. But then...
By Wednesday, it's a disaster again.
Exactly. Because I didn't change the underlying habits that made it messy in the first place. I just treated the symptom.
You were chasing a momentary outcome. As the source famously puts it, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your goal is to write a book, but your daily system is watching Netflix until midnight, you are never going to write that book.
Okay, so if the system is the engine, what is the fuel? Because I can set up a great system, I will run every morning. But if I, deep down, don't see myself as a runner, it feels like I'm fighting my own brain.
And that takes us to the deepest layer of behavior change, which is lesson 3, build identity-based habits. Most people try to change the outcome first. They say, I want to be skinny or I want to be wealthy. Clear argues you have to change your identity first. Who do you believe you are?
The example of the 2 smokers really stuck with me here.
Oh, it's the perfect illustration. Imagine 2 people who are trying to resist a cigarette. Someone offers them a smoke. The first person says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit.
Which sounds totally reasonable.
It does. But listen to the hidden belief there. I'm trying to quit. They're basically admitting they still believe they are a smoker who is just temporarily attempting to be something else. They're hoping their behavior will change while carrying around the exact same identity.
Right. And the second person?
The second person declines and just says, no thanks, I'm not a smoker.
It's a tiny shift in vocabulary, but the psychological shift is massive.
Exactly. It signals a shift in identity. I am not a smoker. It's past tense. It's done. And the way you build that new identity is simply through evidence. Every time you go to the gym, you cast a vote for the identity of I am an athlete. Every time you decline the cigarette, you cast a vote for I am a non-smoker.
And you don't have to be perfect, right? It's an election. It's not a dictatorship.
That's right. You don't need a unanimous vote to win an election.
Yeah.
You just need the majority. You just need more votes for the good habit than the bad one over time.
Okay, so we have the core philosophy down. We need 1% improvements, we focus on systems, and we shift our identity through votes. But let's get into the actual mechanics. How do we physically build these habits? This brings us to lesson 4. Understand the habit loop.
This is where we get into the real behavioral science. The feedback loop that drives all human behavior has 4 distinct steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for a cue. That cue triggers a craving. The craving motivates a response, which is the action you take, and then that response delivers a reward.
And what's brilliant is that Clear maps these 4 steps to his 4 laws of behavior change. Let's walk through them, because this is the practical toolkit you can use right now. Lesson 5 is the first law, which corresponds to the cue, and the law is make it obvious.
This is all about environment design. We like to think we have all this free will and willpower, but we are often just victims of our environment. If you want to eat more apples, but you bury them in the bottom of the crisper drawer in your fridge.
Oh, the crisper drawer is where good intentions go to die. I buy spinach, put it in there, and 2 weeks later it's liquid.
We all do it. If you don't see the cue, you won't take the action. You need to put those apples in a bright bowl right in the center of the kitchen counter. Make the cue visual and obvious.
It's about removing the cognitive load. I shouldn't have to remember to eat healthy. The environment should just prompt me automatically.
Correct. And another very powerful way to make a cue obvious is by using an implementation intention. It sounds like academic jargon, but it's just a specific plan. The formula is simple. I will do this behavior at this time in this location.
So instead of saying I'm going to work out more, which is so vague, it's basically meaningless.
You say, I will exercise for 30 minutes at 5 p.m. at the neighborhood gym, and it completely removes the ambiguity.
And you can take that even further with habit stacking, right? This is my absolute favorite technique from the whole deep dive.
Habit stacking is brilliant because it leverages momentum. You use a habit you already do every single day as the cue for a new one. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit. So after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
You're just piggybacking on neural pathways that are already cemented in your brain. The coffee is the trigger. Okay, so we've made the cue obvious. Now we need to deal with the craving. This is lesson 6, the second law. Make it attractive.
This is where we have to talk about dopamine. We generally think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but it's actually the anticipation chemical. It's about desire. The brain has way more neural circuitry dedicated to wanting rewards than to actually liking them once we get them.
That makes sense. It's why the anticipation of a vacation is sometimes better than the trip itself. So how do we hack that anticipation engine for good habits?
One of the best strategies is temptation bundling. You link an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Oh, like the story of the engineering student Ronan Byrne. I love this guy.
It's a classic example. He knew he needed to exercise more, but what he really wanted to do was just binge watch Netflix. So being an engineering student, he hacked his stationary bike and connected it to his laptop. He wrote a computer program that would only allow Netflix to play if he was pedaling the bike at a certain speed.
That is absolute genius. If he slowed down, the show paused.
Exactly. He bundled the want watching Netflix with the need exercising. Eventually, his brain started craving the workout because it was the only way he could find out what happened next in his show.
And we can also make habits attractive through social influence, right? We are herd animals at the end of the day.
We are deeply tribal. We tend to imitate the habits of 3 groups: the close, the many, and the powerful. If you want to develop a reading habit, join a book club. If you want to get fit, join a running group. The text mentions Nerd Fitness, which is this great community for people who love video games and sci-fi, but also want to get healthy. When you join a tribe like that, the hard habit becomes the normal habit.
It totally changes the mindset from, I have to do this, to, this is just what we do. Okay, moving on to the response phase of the loop. Lesson 7, the third law. Make it easy.
This comes down to the law of least effort. Human nature is fundamentally wired to conserve energy. If a habit involves too much friction, we simply won't do it. We have to reduce the steps between us and the good behavior.
This is why I sleep in my gym clothes if I want to work out in the morning. It removes the friction of having to dig through my drawers for clean socks at 6 a.m.
That is a perfect practical application. And conversely, you want to increase friction for your bad habits. If you watch too much television, unplug the TV after every use and take the batteries out of the remote. Make yourself work for the bad habit.
And for starting good habits, there's this one rule that I think saves so many people from early burnout, the 2-minute rule.
Yes, telling yourself to go run a marathon is terrifying, but putting on your running shoes takes less than 2 minutes. The rule states that when you start a new habit, it must take less than 2 minutes to complete.
But I always wondered about this. Is putting on shoes really a workout? It feels like you're just tricking yourself.
It's not about the workout yet. It's about establishing what Clear calls a gateway habit. You cannot optimize a habit that doesn't exist yet. You have to master the art of just showing up first. Once you tie your shoes and step out the front door, the actual workout usually just happens organically. But you have to make the entry point incredibly, ridiculously easy.
Master the art of showing up. I love that. Okay, so we've made the habit obvious, attractive, and easy. But we want to keep doing it long term. That leads us to lesson 8 and the 4th law. Make it satisfying. This addresses the reward phase.
This is the tricky part. Because of our evolutionary wiring, we live in a delayed return environment today. You save money now so you can retire in 30 years. You eat a salad today to prevent heart disease a decade from now. But our brains evolved in an immediate return environment. We want the calories now. We want the safety now.
The donut tastes amazing right now. The 6-pack abs are months away.
Exactly. And the cardinal rule of behavior change is this. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. So to stick with a habit that has a delayed payoff, you have to artificially attach an immediate bit of pleasure to it.
The text uses the mint toothpaste example for this, right?
Yes, it's a great historical example. The mint flavoring in toothpaste doesn't actually clean your teeth. It doesn't fight cavities at all. But it creates that cool, tingling sensation on your gums. That immediate sensory satisfaction tells your brain, hey, that felt clean and fresh. Let's brush our teeth again tomorrow.
It closes the habit loop instantly.
It does. For something more abstract like saving money, maybe you transfer $50 to your savings account and your immediate reward is getting to visually color in a progress chart or treating yourself to a bubble bath. You just need to feel successful in the present moment.
Speaking of feeling successful, we have to talk about what happens when we fail. Because life happens. You get sick, your car breaks down, you miss a day at the gym. Lesson 10 is never miss twice.
This is really the dividing line between amateurs and professionals. Professionals fail too. They slip up all the time.
Yeah.
But they rebound quickly. The first mistake is just an accident. But the second mistake is the start of a new habit.
Wow. The second mistake is the start of a new habit. That is a heavy realization.
It creates a downward spiral. If you miss one workout, fine, it happens. But if you miss 2 in a row, you are actively casting votes for the identity of someone who skips workouts. Clear makes this profound point, that the bad workouts, the days you show up when you're exhausted, you feel sluggish, you only do half the routine, those are actually the most important days of your entire journey.
Really? Because I usually feel like those days are a complete waste of time. You're not building any muscle.
We might not be building muscle,
Yeah.
but you are preserving the compound interest of your identity. You are proving to yourself that you show up even when conditions are terrible. Maintaining the habit is way more important than maximizing the result on those days. Just don't put up a 0.
It's about protecting the asset.
Right.
And the asset is your identity as a person who shows up. So if we zoom out and look at the big picture here, we need to stop obsessing over the goal and start obsessing over the system. We build that system using the 4 laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And we understand that we are playing a very long game, fighting through that plateau of latent potential until the ice cube finally melts.
And through all of that, remember that habits are just the vehicle to change your identity. The goal isn't to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal isn't to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner.
Shifting from merely doing something to actually being someone, that is the real game changer.
It really is. And before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. It's a bit of a warning about how we apply all these systems, specifically when it comes to tracking our progress.
Okay, let's hear it.
In our modern, data-driven world, we love to track everything, our daily steps, our macros, the pages we read. But there's an economic principle called Goodhart's Law, which states, When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Oh, that's super interesting. Unpack that a little bit.
Well, if your target is simply to hit 10,000 steps on your smartwatch, you might find yourself just pacing in circles around your living room at 11 p.m. instead of actually doing meaningful exercise. If your goal is to read 30 pages a day, you might just skim the pages without absorbing a single word just so you can check the box on your habit tracker.
You end up gaming your own system.
Exactly. Just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's the most important thing. And just because you can't measure something like how kind you are, or how resilient you are, or how present you are with your family doesn't mean it's not vital. Use the data and the systems to guide you, but do not let the metric consume the mission. The actual mission is to become a better version of yourself, not just a highly efficient checkbox ticker.
Focus on who you are becoming, not just the numbers on the scoreboard. That is a powerful place to leave it. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.